I stared at the ornate mahogany casket, my eyes blurred by a constant stream of tears. The sea of mourners had long since departed, leaving me alone to say my final goodbye to Dad. The suffocating silence was shattered by Derek's voice. "So, how much are we getting from your old man?" I whipped around, eyes wide with disbelief. "What? His estate?" Derek pressed, no trace of sympathy in his tone. "The inheritance? How much will it be?" A lump formed in my throat as the weight of his callous words hit me. This was the man I'd married, the one who'd professed his undying love and support just months ago. Yet here he stood, mere hours after we'd laid Dad to rest, fixated solely on potential financial gain. I don't know the details," I stammered, still reeling from the emotional whiplash. Derek scoffed. "Well, you better find out. Your old man was loaded. We're entitled to our cut." Anger flared within me, a fire ignited by the stark contrast between the man before me and the one I thought I'd married. "My father just died, Derek? Show some respect." His eyes narrowed. "Don't get all sanctimonious on me. This is the real world, babe. Money talks." I opened my mouth to retort, but the words died on my lips. In that moment, it was as if the veil had been lifted, revealing the true nature of the man I'd vowed to spend my life with. The man whose ambition and greed clearly outweighed any love for me. Choking back tears, I stormed out of the room, Derek's voice trailing behind me. "We're not going to struggle like your parents did, Marlene. You hear me? This is our chance." His words echoed through the cavernous halls of the funeral home, a cruel reminder that the life I thought we had was nothing but an illusion. I couldn't shake the feeling of disillusionment as memories from happier times resurfaced, taunting me with the facade Derek had so expertly constructed. Our early years played like an idyllic montage, his hand gently resting on the small of my back as we strolled through the park, his warm smile as we dined by candlelight, his infectious laughter echoing through our modest apartment. In those days, money held little importance for us. Derek was content working as a high school English teacher, believing that impacting young minds was the noblest of callings. I poured my heart into the local nonprofit, inspired by Dad's philanthropic spirit. We lived simply, but our bond was rich with understanding and shared purpose. Perhaps that's what made Derek's descent into greed so insidious. The shift was gradual, like a malignant growth festering unnoticed. At first, the changes were subtle, a newfound fixation on designer labels, an inexplicable disdain for his once beloved profession, trivial indulgences that I naively overlooked, blinded by the idealistic notion that the man I loved remained unchanged at his core. Our first major clash came when Derek abruptly resigned from teaching without discussing it with me first. "This job is beneath me," he scoffed, tossing his school ID onto the kitchen counter. "I'm destined for greater things." I stared at him, bewildered. "But you always said teaching was your calling. What's going on, Derek?" He waved a dismissive hand. "I've outgrown that mindset, babe. It's time to aim higher, starting with finding a career worthy of my talents." In the days that followed, Derek's disdain for frugality became apparent. Date nights transformed into reservations at opulent restaurants where the wine list cost more than my monthly salary. Weekends once spent hiking or visiting museums gave way to conspicuous shopping excursions, our humble abode rapidly filling with designer furnishings and ostentatious art pieces. "You deserve the finer things in life," he'd insist whenever I questioned the extravagance, his words laced with a strange undercurrent of resentment. My pleas for restraint and open dialogue fell on deaf ears. Derek had been consumed by an insatiable hunger, one that steadily drove a wedge between us. The man I'd married, the one who found joy in simplicity and connection, was slipping further away with each materialistic indulgence. Derek's fixation with wealth and status only intensified as the months ticked by. Our once peaceful home became a battleground, with heated arguments erupting over his reckless spending habits. "This Rolex cost more than my entire year's salary," I shouted, waving the ostentatious timepiece in his face. "We can't afford these kinds of luxuries, Derek," he scoffed, snatching the watch back. "Don't be so provincial, Marlene. This is the lifestyle we deserve, the one your rich daddy enjoyed while looking down his nose at the rest of us." The bitterness in his tone struck me like a physical blow. "My father worked hard for everything he built," I shot back, fighting the sting of tears. and he never flaunted his wealth like some arrogant buffoon. Derek's eyes narrowed dangerously. Well, now it's my turn. Our turn. We're not living like paupers anymore. Desperate to make him see reason, I tried a different tack. Don't you remember how happy we were when money wasn't a priority? We had everything we needed, each other, fulfilling work, a warm home. Had being the operative word, he sneered. I'm not settling for your hippie ideals and second-hand dregs anymore. Either get on board or get out of my way. The venom in his words left me reeling. This angry, materialistic stranger had fully consumed the man I once knew and loved. In the days that followed, the disintegration of our marriage accelerated at a dizzying pace. Derek grew more distant, his routine now centered around glad-handing with the city's elite and ingratiating himself with wealthy social circles. If I dared broach the subject of his wasteful spending, he'd brush me off with thinly veiled contempt. Don't worry your pretty little head about finances, dear, he purred in that mocking tone. Just leave it to me. It wasn't until Elena, my closest friend, pulled me aside one afternoon that I began to see the full extent of Derek's betrayal. Marlene, I have to tell you something, she said uneasily, her warm brown eyes filled with pity. Lowering her voice, she continued, I saw Derek having lunch with some woman last week, at that new high-end bistro downtown. My heart plummeted. What? Are you sure? Elena nodded solemnly. Honey, I'm so sorry. From the way they were interacting, it seemed like more than just a business meeting. Bile rose in my throat as her implication washed over me. Of course, in his endless pursuit of wealth and status, Derek's indifference towards me had given way to outright infidelity. The once solid foundation of our marriage had crumbled, reduced to rubble by his greed and wandering eye. Choking back tears, I met Elena's mournful gaze and forced out the words that had been weighing on me for far too long. I think I need to leave him. Despite my newfound resolve to leave Derek, extricating myself from the marriage proved easier said than done. Not only did his deceit and greed continue unabated, but his professional life began spiraling out of control as well. It started with the little things. Arriving home progressively later from work, absently scrolling through his phone during what few conversations we still had. When I finally mustered the courage to confront him, his excuse was always the same. Just trying to get ahead at the firm, babe. You know how it is. Except I didn't know. The Derek I'd married had loved his job teaching high school English, finding genuine fulfillment in fostering young minds. This obsessive, workaholic behavior was yet another glaring red flag that the man I vowed to spend my life with was long gone. The cracks in his professional facade became increasingly apparent over the following weeks. Meetings with supervisors held behind closed doors, urgent hushed phone calls, the vacant stare that often clouded his eyes, all signs that his career was hanging by a thread. One evening I returned home from the nonprofit to find Derek slumped on the couch, disheveled and reeking of stale liquor. You're home early, he slurred, not bothering to lift his head from where it lolled against the armrest. I bristled at his flippant tone. Derek, what's going on? You're worrying me. With a grunt, he hauled himself into a sitting position and fixed me with a bleary glare. What's going on is that I'm about to lose my job because the bigwigs don't appreciate my innovative strategies. He sneered the last words, making air quotes with his fingers. My brow furrowed. This was the first mention of any workplace issues. Why didn't you tell me? We could have discussed it, tried to. Discussing it isn't going to save my career, he snapped, cutting me off. Those elitist pencil pushers have had it out for me from day one. They're just intimidated by my potential. I opened my mouth, but he barreled onwards, working himself into an irate frenzy. Well, screw them. I don't need their pathetic six-figure gig. There are way bigger opportunities on the horizon, opportunities that'll make their bourgeois little heads spin. Unsure how to respond, I could only stare in stunned silence as Derek ranted and raved about corporate conspiracies and his bright future. His words may have been fueled by the hazy indignation of alcohol, but they hinted at the wounded pride and bitter resentment steadily poisoning his psyche. In that moment, it became clear. The stable career and comfortable life we'd built together no longer captivated Derek's ambitions. Our once modest dreams had been supplanted by a ravenous hunger for status, power, and wealth. Lots of wealth. The next afternoon, Elena called with another bombshell that obliterated any remaining illusions about my husband's integrity. "Marlene, you're not going to like this," she began uneasily. "But I saw Derek meeting with some woman again yesterday, at that park near downtown." My grip tightened on the phone as realization settled in like a leaden weight. "Let me guess, not the kind of meeting you'd expect between coworkers?" There was a weighted pause before Elena exhaled slowly. "No, honey, definitely not." All at once, the pieces began clicking into place. Derek's frequent late nights, his newfound obsession with wealth and status, his indifference towards me, it all stemmed from another woman. Another life he was building, one untethered from the marriage vows he'd so carelessly discarded. My next words came out in a choked whisper. "He's been cheating on me, hasn't he?" Elena's pained silence was confirmation enough. In that moment, the floodgates shattered, a torrent of rage and betrayal crashing over me as I realized the true depths of my husband's selfish depravity. Through my sobs, I managed to choke out one final question. Does she have money?" Elena's response cleaved what little remained of my heart in two. "Yeah. From what I overheard, she's loaded." After Elena's revelation, a numb disbelief enveloped me for days. Part of me still clung to the desperate hope that Derek's indiscretions were just a momentary lapse, that the man I loved was still in there somewhere, buried beneath the avarice and betrayal. That flicker of naive optimism was extinguished one frigid evening when the evidence of his unfaithfulness slapped me squarely across the face. I had returned home late from a charity fundraiser, my body and spirit drained from putting on a brave face all night. Padding into the kitchen, I was surprised to find the lights on and Derek's laptop open on the counter. At first, I dismissed it as him simply forgetting to log off before leaving for wherever it was he disappeared to these days. But as I drew closer, something on the screen caught my eye. An unmistakable charge from a high-end jewelry boutique. My heart stuttered as I clicked to scrutinize the charge further. There it was in glaring digital font, a receipt for a diamond tennis bracelet totaling nearly $10,000. Ice flooded my veins as the sick realization dawned on me. This was no treat for his devoted wife. This was an extravagant gift, purchased with funds from our joint savings account, the one meant for our future and security. The one Derek had been steadily draining to bankroll his tawdry affair. White-hot anger lanced through me, mouth going dry as I heard the telltale jingle of keys at the front door. Derek sauntered in a moment later, seeming not to notice me at first. It wasn't until I cleared my throat loudly that his gaze snapped over, eyes widening fractionally. "Oh, hey, babe. Didn't expect you home, so. Who is she?" I cut him off, jaw clenched. He blinked dumbly. "Who's who?" "Don't play dumb," I snapped, snatching up the laptop and shoving the incriminating receipt in his face. "Who's the woman you've been spending our savings on?" Understanding dawned across Derek's features, swiftly morphing into a sneer. "So what if I got somebody a little gift? I've more than earned the right to spend my money how I see fit." My hand reflexively flew to my stinging cheek before I even registered the crack of his backhand. "Don't you dare talk down to me," he snarled, eyes glittering with contempt. "If it weren't for me, you'd still be a washed-up nobody slumming with the paupers." Shock and pain paralyzed me as Derek unleashed the full torrent of his vitriol. "Let's be honest here, Marlene. Our marriage was a mutually beneficial arrangement. Nothing more. I played the doting husband while you dangled the carrot of your old man's fortune in front of me. Well, I'm sick of chasing scraps." He grabbed a fistful of my hair, wrenching my head back so our faces were inches apart. The acrid reek of bourbon and expensive cologne assailed my senses. "It's time you held up your end of the bargain. I want access to that trust fund, all of it. Because let's face facts. I'm the only adult in this relationship, the one with actual ambition and drive. Without me, you'd still be a pathetic little charity case living off Daddy's scraps." His words lacerated my soul, finally obliterating any remnants of the honorable man I thought I'd married. This cruel, domineering monster was the true Derek Hollister. A black-hearted conman who had masterfully played me for a fool using the oldest trick in the book. He released me with a disdainful shove, letting my body crumple limply to the floor as he stalked off, already dialing his phone. "Hey baby, it's me," he purred. "Clear your evening. Daddy's about to come into some money." I kept my head bowed as Derek stormed back into the kitchen, his expensive loafers clicking menacingly on the tile. A tremor ran through me, every instinct screaming at me to flee, but I remained rooted to the spot, bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation. "Well," he sneered, grabbing a fistful of my hair and yanking my head back. "I'm waiting for an explanation, you ungrateful little—" "There is no inheritance," I interrupted, the words tumbling out in a breathless rush. "Not for you, at least." Derek's face contorted in an incredulous sneer. "What the hell are you talking about?" Steeling myself, I met his gaze unflinchingly. My father's assets and holdings were all locked into an irrevocable trust after his death. Yeah, in order for either of us to access a single cent, we both have to agree. Comprehension sank in, quickly followed by disbelief. You're lying. I'm not," I stated it simply, matter-of-factly. Those were the conditions he stipulated, a final test to judge the character of the person I chose as a husband. Derek opened his mouth, but I pressed on, determined to unleash the torrent of pent-up emotion that had been simmering all these years. "He knew, Derek. My father saw through your facade from the beginning. He recognized you for the materialistic, self-serving leech that you are." The words spilled forth like shrapnel, each one laced with a lifetime's worth of anger and disgust. "I was just a means to an end for you. A convenient pathway to the fortune you thought was your birthright. Well, let me enlighten you." My voice dropped to a seething hiss. "The only birthright you'll ever receive is a parade of sleepless nights, wondering how you could have been so blind to sacrifice everything for greed." A vein pulsed visibly in Derek's forehead as I issued the killing blow. "This marriage is over. Consider the settlement from my personal savings your reward for playing the part so convincingly. It's more than you deserve, but at least now you won't drag anyone else down with your pathetic existence." The resounding slap echoed through the cavernous kitchen like a gunshot. My head whipped to the side from the force of the blow, the sharp sting blossoming across my cheek as I crumpled to the floor. Derek towered over me, chest heaving with unbridled rage. You ungrateful, treacherous bitch," he roared, specks of spittle flying from his lips. "After all I sacrificed for you? For US?" With a feral snarl, he hauled me up by the collar of my blouse until our faces were mere inches apart. His next words dripped with venom. "You'll be the one wondering, Marlene. Wondering how you'll survive without a single penny to your trust fund name. Because I'll make sure every friend, every business associate knows exactly how low you stooped to try and rip me off." He shoved me away, my back slamming against the counter as I fought to remain upright. "This isn't over, not by a long shot. You hear me?" Chest heaving, eyes wild with fury, Derek snatched up his coat and stormed towards the front door, pausing only to lob one final parting shot. "Have fun with your precious charities, you pathetic do-gooder, because my dear, dear wife, that's all you'll have left when I'm through." The door slammed with deafening finality, leaving me huddled on the kitchen floor, cradling my throbbing face as the enormity of my situation washed over me. Derek's path of destruction was only just beginning, and whether I was prepared or not, I was squarely in the crosshairs. In the days following Derek's explosive departure, I found myself adrift, unmoored by the jarring reality that my life had become unrecognizable. The cozy home we'd built, the dreams we'd shared, all desecrated by one man's insatiable greed. My initial instinct was to withdraw, to lick my wounds and mourn the demise of my naively idealistic notions about love and partnership. But the more I dwelled on Derek's vicious threats, the more a simmering fury took root. He wanted to drag my name through the mud? To punish me for seeing through his charade? Well, two could play at that game. It started small at first. A carefully worded email to our property manager, ensuring Derek had no way to siphon further funds from our joint accounts. Another message to my assistant at the nonprofit, alerting her that I would need to take some personal time. Then came the bigger moves, executed with a calculated precision that would make even Derek's mercenary soul proud. First, I orchestrated a video call with Alina, filling her in on every lurid detail of Derek's betrayal and demanding she back my version of events, should he try any underhanded tactics. Her expression shifted from horror to grim resolution as I outlined my gambit. Next, I drafted the divorce papers, employing the shrewdest family law firm in the city to guarantee Derek received not a penny more than what I deemed fair restitution, a settlement payment of $200,000 from my personal trust, enough to ensure he could slink out of my life forever, but not so exorbitant that he could squander it indefinitely. Elena insisted on being present for the signing, watching with poorly concealed disdain as Derek scrawled his name with a trembling hand. "I hope you realize how lucky you are," she said, voice low and filled with quiet menace. "If it were up to me, you'd be leaving with nothing but the clothes on your back, you spineless gravy-trained." "Elena, it's done," I interjected firmly, as much for her benefit as to halt Derek's wounded sputtering. "He's gotten what he deserves. More than he deserves, even." The implication hung heavy in the air as the two of us stared him down, daring him to protest, to unload the inevitable torrent of vitriol I knew was simmering behind those smoldering eyes. But after an agonizing moment, Derek simply gathered up the papers and stormed towards the exit without a word. Just before disappearing through the door, he paused, turning to fix me with one final glower. "This won't be the last you hear from me, Marlene." It wasn't a threat, but a snarled promise, saturated with a bitterness so viscous it was nearly tangible. Then, like a noxious vapor dissipating in the breeze, he slipped out the door and was gone. It would be weeks before I heard from Derek again, the eerie silence only periodically shattered by news of him liquidating assets or reports of increasingly erratic public outbursts. A small, vindictive part of me relished every lurid detail, savoring his downward spiral into irrelevance. But I knew this temporary reprieve was precisely that, temporary. Sooner or later, Derek's rage and indignation would reach a crescendo, and when it did, I intended to be ready. Because while he'd been content to leech from others for sustenance, I was preparing to fight this battle the same way I'd built my entire life, through hard work, perseverance, and a steadfast refusal to let anyone or anything break me. Not even the man who had once sworn to cherish me, in sickness, health, and utter betrayal of every vow. The first whispers began trickling in a few weeks after Derek's unceremonious exit from my life. Snippets of information delivered by well-meaning friends and colleagues, each one more damning than the last. "Did you hear Derek got fired from his job? Apparently he was skimming funds for personal use. I ran into Derek downtown the other day. He was drunk, ranting about you and your dad's money like a man possessed. Derek's been blacklisted by every law firm in the city after that courtroom outburst. He's become a total pariah." At first, I shrugged off the gossip as idle chatter, gossamer threads of hearsay that held no true weight or substance. But as the reports persisted, it became impossible to ignore the harsh reality. Derek's unraveling was veering rapidly into total meltdown territory. It all came to a head during a garden party hosted by Elena to celebrate the launch of her new art gallery. I had been mingling amiably with potential donors when the first piercing shatters of glass shattered the refined ambiance. A chorus of startled gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as Derek stumbled into view, wild-eyed and swaying perilously. "There she is," he bellowed, words slurred and reeking of cheap liquor. "The ungrateful harpy who destroyed everything." Elena's security team immediately moved to intervene, but he shrugged them off with drunken bravado. "Don't try and silence me," Derek raged, spittle flying from his chapped lips. "Everyone here deserves to know what kind of shrew they're dealing with." My cheeks flushed crimson as every eye turned towards me. Clearing my throat, I addressed the owner of the gallery in measured tones. "Please accept my apologies for this disruption. I'll handle." "She played me for a fool, every single one of you," Derek interrupted, his tirade rapidly crescendoing into unhinged raving. "All for the sake of money. Her money." There were audible gasps and shocked whispers. I fixed Derek with a steely glare. "That's enough, Derek. You've embarrassed yourself enough for one evening." But he barreled onward, fueled by an endless wellspring of spite and injured pride. "After everything I sacrificed for our future, she tried to steal my inheritance. Can you believe the audacity?" The words barely registered before a harsh bark of laughter burst forth, unbidden. I couldn't contain the eruption of bitter mirth bubbling up inside me. "Your inheritance?" I echoed incredulously. Derek, you arrogant, pathetic fool. His jaw went slack, belatedly recognizing the potent mixture of pity and revulsion simmering behind my gaze. Don't you realize why this happened? Why you've ended up a disgraced, destitute laughingstock? My voice dropped to a hush, yet carried clearly across the garden. It's because you put your faith in money rather than the people who actually loved you. You traded ethics and integrity for greed, and now you have nothing. No wealth, no status, not even a shred of self-respect left. My denunciation hung heavy in the air, each word landing like a scathing slap. For one fleeting instant, Derek's bravado faltered. Then, like a rattlesnake rearing back, his expression contorted into one of pure, unhinged loathing. "This isn't over, Marlene," he snarled, fists clenching. "I'll make you regret ever." "Get him out of here," Elena interjected coolly, having materialized at my side with her security detail in tow. Within seconds, Derek was being forcibly hauled away, his drunken imprecations fading into the distance as he was deposited unceremoniously on the sidewalk outside. As tranquility gradually returned to the garden, I felt a gentle pressure on my arm. "Marlene, are you all right?" Elena asked softly, brow creased in concern. I offered her a wan smile and patted her hand reassuringly. "I'm fine. More than fine, really." My gaze drifted towards the path where Derek had been dragged, visualizing his once smug confidence withering beneath the harsh light of public shame and rejection. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom and release. The demise of my treacherous ex-husband was nearly complete, and from the ashes of betrayal, a new, more resilient woman was emerging. How could he do this to us? I muttered under my breath, bile rising in my throat as I took in the sight before me. My loving husband of 15 years, John, was strolling through the amusement park, his arm wrapped around the waist of a tall blonde. Laughing alongside them was a young boy around 6 or 7, gleefully clutching a stuffed animal prize. I grabbed Lily's hand, my fingers trembling. "Lily, honey," I choked out. "Let's go on the carousel, okay?" I steered my confused daughter away from the painful scene, barely holding myself together. Just hours earlier, John had kissed Lily on the cheek and wished her a happy birthday before rushing off for an emergency client meeting. And here he was, breaking promise after promise. I helped Lily onto a painted horse before settling onto my own with a deep exhale, struggling to gather my swirling thoughts. John and I had been college sweethearts, two idealistic kids ready to take on the world, mooning over dreams of a perfect family someday. After graduation, through lean times and multiple job switches, we had built a good life together. Or so I believed. We both worked hard, John as a marketing director and me a freelance CPA, hustling to pay the bills and save for Lily's future while still finding little moments of joy together as family. Sure, money had been tighter since I stepped back on work to care for Lily, and our date nights weren't as frequent anymore amid our tiring routines. But I thought our relationship was rooted in devotion and trust. I even overlooked John's recent distractedness as work stress. Oh, how wrong I was, that sneaking bastard! I glanced over at Lily, who was happily oblivious, giggling away on her carousel horse, my heart squeezed with anger at John's careless selfishness. By running off with some tramp, he was also abandoning his daughter on her 10th birthday. As we walked around after the ride, I slipped into numb autopilot, not trusting myself to hold it together if I dwelled any more on John's betrayal. I had to put on a brave smile for Lily's sake on her special day. We played carnival games, snacked on cotton candy, and laughed on the roller coasters. With each passing moment, though, I struggled to bury the simmering hurt and fury. Finally, as we exited yet another ride, Lily turned to me with questioning eyes. "Mom, it's been really fun today, but I kinda thought Dad would be here too." She trailed off uncertainly. "Is he going to come later for the fireworks?" The hope shining through my little girl's face unleashed a floodgate of long-suppressed emotions. I couldn't hold back the burning tears anymore. "Oh, sweetheart," I wrapped Lily in a fierce, protective hug as sobs racked my body. She deserved to know the truth. I swiped at my running mascara and met her alarmed eyes. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you this, but I saw your dad here earlier. He was with another lady and boy." I watched Lily closely for her reaction. Confusion clouded her features. "What do you mean with them?" she asked hesitantly. I took a deep breath before continuing gently. Honey, he had his arm around that woman, like he does with me sometimes, and he was playing with the boy too, winning him prizes. Lily's face fell as understanding dawned. You mean, like a date? But dads don't go on dates with other moms. Does this mean he doesn't want to spend time with us anymore? My heart cracked hearing the tremor in her small voice. I squared my shoulders, steeling my resolve right then. John may have betrayed me as a partner, but I would not let him hurt my little girl so callously. Oh, Lily, I honestly don't know why your dad did this, but no matter what, we have each other. I'll always be here for you, okay? I squeezed her hand supportively. Lily rushed into my arms again, hugging me tightly. I love you, Mom, she whispered. Those 4 words were like a soothing balm, nourishing my soul and strengthening my conviction to shield Lily from further heartache in whatever ways necessary. As I held my brave daughter close, staring out at the colorful horizon, I sensed a new chapter dawning. No more blind trust without verification when it came to John. For Lily's well-being, I would get to the bottom of his shady behavior. If he thought he could just walk all over us while I dutifully covered for him, he had another thing coming. For now, I had a little girl's birthday magic to preserve at all costs. But soon enough, John would have to own up. Justice would be served one way or another. After all, this was just Act 1, and the real fireworks were yet to come. Over the next few weeks, I struggled to act normal whenever John was around. I didn't dare confront him yet without concrete proof of his betrayal. So I swallowed the acid words on the tip of my tongue each time he casually pecked my check after returning home late from another business meeting. The gnawing pit in my stomach grew more cavernous with each of his transparent lies. My raging suspicions were all but confirmed when I overheard John murmuring affectionately into his phone one night after he assumed I was asleep. I crept closer to the home office door and pressed my ear against it. I missed you too, Jess, John chuckled softly. Yesterday was so much fun. I can't stop thinking about our time together. Jess. Short for Jessica, perhaps? So the backstabbing weasel was on a first-name basis with his floozy girlfriend. I dug my nails into my clammy palms, struggling to restrain my disgust. John continued reminiscing in hushed tones about some resort getaway filled with cozy dinners and stolen kisses. My lungs constricted, bile rising in my throat. So, while John claimed to be on work trips, he was actually wining and dining his mistress at fancy hotels. I couldn't stomach hearing another word. I retreated back to our bedroom on unsteady feet, my earlier suspicion hardening into cold, hard fury. The next morning, I dropped Lily off at school before driving over to John's office. I simply had to clear the air once and for all. Surely there was an innocent misunderstanding. My loyal husband of 15 years would never actually cheat on me. With every mile, I desperately tried convincing myself of this alternate rosy reality. But when I stepped through the polished doors, my last hopes were dashed. Why, yes, John Mitchell just left for Memphis, his startled secretary Evelyn confirmed. He'll be meeting clients there before returning next Tuesday. Memphis, not the Jersey headquarters he had specifically mentioned to me in passing over breakfast. Throat constricting, I turned on my heels and fled to the safety of my vehicle before Evelyn could glimpse the hot tears of frustration stinging my eyes. Resting my head warily against the steering wheel, my last illusions withered away. My husband was indeed having an affair behind my back. Over the next week, my state of mind deteriorated into a foggy mess of anxiety and sorrow. I continued probing for the elusive truth, despite already knowing it deep down. When John didn't return on the expected Tuesday, instead extending his trip another 4 days, I hit my breaking point. As I tidied his drawers while sorting laundry, a flowery perfume wafted out that I didn't recognize. Underneath the folds, a lace negligee of a much smaller size than my own laid provocatively. That did it. All restraint evaporated instantly like steam. Snatching my purse with trembling hands while fighting angry tears, I convinced our next-door neighbor Jane to watch Lily for the night. Before I lost my nerve, I hopped into an Uber bound for the seedier side of town. It was time for drastic measures. I hesitated only briefly outside room 17B as the muffled sounds of ecstasy leaked under the door. Then, steeling my shaking bones, I boldly pushed inside. The exhibition of twisting limbs and tangled sheets burned my eyes, but I forced myself to keep watching through narrowed slits. No backing down now. I needed to see my cheating scumbag husband in all his whoring glory to file for the strongest divorce case possible. To think I had wasted years of loyalty and intimacy on this spineless loser humping the mattress without a care in the world. As they both erupted into climax, I whipped out my smartphone to capture the money shot. Click, click, click. Undisputable proof of adultery. No denying it now with this lurid footage in hand. "What the hell?" John shouted as the naked woman under him, likely Jessica, let loose an ear-piercing shriek. Their interlocked body parts scrambled to hide under the rumpled covers, but I had already seen enough. More than enough for multiple lifetimes, unfortunately. I smirked vindictively, pocketing my smoking gun evidence as the color drained from John's stubbled features. He began sputtering. "Susan, I can exp," but I slammed the door mid-sentence. Time to finally bust this pathetic cheater with the power of truth. My fulminating heart nearly rejoiced, picturing the fallout headed his way. The amusement park stretched before us in all its frenetic glory, a whirling kaleidoscope of colors under the bright summer sun. I squeezed Lily's hand tightly, hoping to infuse some of my nervous energy into her smaller frame. As we walked through the cheering crowds, nausea churned my otherwise empty stomach. This was it. The confrontation I had obsessed over planning since that sordid night at the hotel. When I stumbled upon John canoodling his busty mistress mid-thrust, I knew my decade-long marriage was finished. Once Lily turned 18, there would be nothing binding me to that cheating scumbag any longer. But I couldn't let my sweet Lily go on believing in her father's devotion any longer either. She had moped for days when John missed her chorus recital to extend his work trip. Meanwhile, that two-timing bastard was likely wining and dining Jessica at some five-star restaurant without a care in the world. An acidic fury licked my veins, imagining Lily continuing to pine for her father's affection that would never come. No, it was time she witnessed exactly what John prioritized over family. I would finally expose his true duplicitous colors. As we meandered through the park, scanning the swelling crowds, my heart pounded a frantic staccato beat. Where was that rat? Lily prattled on excitedly about rides, but her voice faded to background static against the rushing blood in my ears. And then suddenly, I spotted him. Talking to a caramel-haired woman by the funnel cake stand, his beefy arm draped possessively around her waist. At their feet stood a young boy with a thatch of chestnut hair, likely no older than 7. He was eagerly stuffing his face with confetti-dusted fried dough, getting sugar all over his round cheeks. My fists involuntarily clenched, and I nudged Lily gently. "See that man over there in the red shirt, sweetie?" I softly murmured against her hair. As she glanced over, her eyes doubled in size. "Daddy?" Lily screeched in disbelief. "Who is that lady with him and the little boy?" She whipped her head back and forth between me and John frantically as realization sunk in. Meanwhile, John had heard Lily's cry, his cocky grin melting like hot wax. His arm dropped from Jessica's waist as they spun to face us. I stalked closer, keeping a firm grip on Lily's clammy palm. Halting an arm's length away, I fixed my estranged husband with a blistering glare that could melt steel. "Well, isn't this quite the father-son outing, John?" I spat, vitriol coating each syllable. "Or maybe this blonde bombshell is just your new mommy replacement for when I kick you to the curb." John paled further as a sheen of sweat beaded his pasty skin. "Susan, let me explain," he choked out weakly. I cut off his pathetic sputtering with a disgusted snort as Jessica stared fixedly at the ground. "Save your smarmy excuses. Nothing justifies abandoning your wife and daughter to play house with this home-wrecking bimbo." I growled savagely. Meanwhile, poor Lily looked utterly lost and crestfallen as her fantasy father figure withered before her eyes. Seeing those fat alligator tears shimmering along her lashes fueled my raging inferno even hotter. "Is this why you are always too busy with work to spend time with me, Daddy?" Lily finally croaked out. John's shoulders slumped further as shame painted his features. He reached towards our daughter pleadingly, but she instantly recoiled several steps. "Bug, it's complicated. I never meant to hurt you or Mommy." I quickly intervened before he could poison Lily's mind with more deception. Having my innocent child comforting this cheating trash was unacceptable. Snatching Lily close before she could absorb more trauma, I addressed John with blistering contempt. You sniveling coward are hereby cut off from our lives. I wasted too many years blinded by your lies already. Let's go, Lily. Keeping my head high, I steered us swiftly towards the park exit without another backwards glance. As we retreated from the battlegrounds, a bittersweet sensation flooded my frayed nerves. I had shielded Lily from further manipulation and uncover the ugly truth as promised. She would undoubtedly have many confusing emotions to process in the coming days. But moving forward, we could rebuild our lives free of John's contaminating presence. What lay ahead might seem uncertain, but embracing this new destiny solo could only lead to bigger and better things. I awoke with a jolt, instantly oriented to my unfamiliar surroundings. The floral wallpaper and lacy curtains were a far cry from my bedroom's simple blue hues. Then the events of the previous night came thundering back. That disastrous confrontation at the amusement park, which ended with John pathetically begging on his knees, a snotty mess of tears and excuses. Jessica and her son had already scurried off by then, not daring to meet my incensed glare. The raging aftermath was truly a sight to behold, apparently, with crowds of spectators gawking. After threatening John with a restraining order if he dared show his despicable face again, I hurried a shell-shocked Lily back home to safety. We collapsed into bed early, emotionally drained from the day's dramatic unraveling. Now, as morning light bathed the cozy cottage interior, I heard a soft rap at the bedroom door. I opened it to find Lily's petite frame swimming in an oversized t-shirt, her blonde curls a tangled bedhead. Wordlessly, I pulled my baby girl close, cocooning her in my warmth. We soon headed downstairs, lured by the delicious scent of Alice's famous blueberry pancakes. My college roommate had graciously offered her seaside vacation home when she heard of my impending separation. "You and Lily take however long you need," Alice urged last night over the phone. "Frank and I rarely use the Cape May place anyway." So this would be our safe haven until the divorce dust settled and I figured out longer-term housing. John may have shattered my rosy dreams, but I refused to crumble. I had a child relying on me. After enjoying Alice's fluffy stacks drowned in maple and some much-needed girl talk, Lily wandered outside to explore the beach. Gazing after her through the large kitchen windows, I let out a heavy sigh. My poor daughter didn't deserve any of this ugliness and betrayal after already losing her mother so young. At that moment, my cell vibrated loudly against the granite countertops. I glanced down to see John's goofy contact photo flashing insistently. Speak of the devil himself. Swiping angrily, I answered the call. Might as well rip the Band-Aid off fully regarding where things stood. "Susan!" John's voice crackled desperately through the speakers. "Thank God you answered. Please don't hang up." Rolling my eyes in disgust, I growled, "You have 2 minutes, John. Make it quick." "I just wanted to explain everything. This whole mess with Jessica just got out of hand." He rushed on, not bothering to hide the desperation in his tone. "Please, I'll do anything. Counseling, quit my job, just don't leave." "Are you quite finished?" I snapped sharply. "Why should I believe anything spewing from your lying mouth? Does our decade together mean so little that you'd throw it away for some cheap trollop?" "No, I swear she meant nothing," John sputtered. "It was only a stupid fling. I was selfish and weak. But I want to fix us. Please, Susan, I'm begging you. Think of our family." His words ignited a white-hot fury. I briefly imagined marching over to throttle some sense into that thick, stupid skull. "How dare you appeal to family values after sneaking around behind our backs for who knows how long?" "I saw the text messages and racy lingerie, John," I snarled. "Man up and take accountability for once. Consider this your final notice that I'm filing for divorce." I relished hitting the red end button on his sputtering excuses, feeling fully empowered by my conviction. The rose-tinted glasses had shattered fully, leaving no doubt remaining. Loyalty meant nothing to someone who could lie through their teeth so easily to my face all this time. Well, no more. I refused to waste another minute questioning my worth because of his moral failing. A new life awaited where Lily and I could thrive happily without John's toxicity. My attorney had already been contacted to proceed with the separation filing. Today marked the first strides towards an abuse-free future. Heading back outside into the salty ocean breeze, I joined my daughter constructing sandcastles, the horizon filled with nothing but boundless possibility. I tapped my foot impatiently against the worn linoleum, assaulting the last cold dregs of my coffee. Where was he? John better not stand me up again and leave me waiting here like an idiot. Not after explicitly requesting to meet one last time for closure. Mercifully, the nondescript diner door chimed open then. I spotted John shuffling towards my corner booth, appearing almost timid. Once seated across from me, though, his earlier contrition evaporated instantly. Leaning back against cracked red vinyl, John crossed his arms defiantly. "All right, let's talk. But before you go making any rash decisions, Susan, hear me out. I want shared custody of Lily." I choked on my own saliva. "Excuse me, you must be out of your mind," I countered through wheezing breaths. John barreled on aggressively. "That adorable little girl deserves a father figure in her life. You honestly want to rob Lily of that joy? And disrupt her sense of normalcy even more?" His beady eyes glinted with cunning determination. My fingernails carved half-moon indentations into my sweaty palms under the table. This manipulative snake thought he still could dictate terms? "You lost any paternal privileges cheating on our family, John," I seethed quietly. "Lily requires way more care and attention than you ever provided her anyway." "Oh, please," John snorted derisively. "I may have screwed up recently, but don't pretend it was all rainbows and sunshine before. With you off pampering high-end clients at all hours, poor Lily barely saw either of us most days." His accusations ignited my simmering rage into a full rolling boil. I fought the almost uncontrollable urge to lunge across the table and throttle John's thick neck. "How dare you pin your neglect on my workload?" I spat contemptuously instead. At least those clients guaranteed Lily's school funds, clothes, extracurriculars over the years, things she always had to beg her deadbeat father for. John at least had the decency to appear abashed, picking at non-existent lint. After a charged beat, he mumbled weakly, "Jessica, she made me feel alive again, like before we became bogged down with so many responsibilities." Lifting his eyes beseechingly to meet my stony gaze, he implored, "Can't we just try counseling, Susan? I can't lose you both." I surveyed John's aging visage critically, the wrinkles etching hard lines, bald patch spreading, and paunch steadily expanding. Was this really the same man I fell for years ago when his sculpted arms could effortlessly lift me against his firm chest? That John was long gone, apparently, replaced by this shallow, selfish imposter twiddling his thumbs across from me. I exhaled slowly, feeling the fight seep away. "No, John, too much damage is done. I saw the real you that night, your complete apathy at destroying Lily's innocence and trust. As her mother, I refuse to let you keep poisoning her mind and self-worth." Pushing up from the table, I leaned across and fixed John with an icy glare. "Consider this your final notice. If I see you anywhere near me or Lily again, I won't hesitate getting a restraining order." John lunged forward to grab my wrist pleadingly. "Please, Susan, be reasonable. We can still fix this. I need you both." Wrenching my hand back forcefully, I tossed a crumpled 20 on the table that would easily cover both our untouched meals. John called after me desperately, but I didn't pause, pushing into bright daylight and taking a deep restorative gulp. The fresh outdoor air filled my lung with newfound clarity. I felt fully unburdened from my past illusions. John refusing accountability cemented I made the right call, kicking him to the curb for good. Settling behind my steering wheel, resolve coursed through me stronger than ever. I would inform my lawyer about John's delusional custody demands immediately to get that scum out of our lives quicker. The court would take one look at his sloppy appearance today, bloodshot eyes, tousled hair, mismatched shoes, and declare him an unfit parent easily. Peeling out onto the open road ahead, I cranked up the radio defiantly. 2 middle fingers saluted the shrinking diner behind me. John wanted a cutthroat legal battle? Oh, he would sorely regret awakening this mama bear's wrath. Deep breaths, Lily, sweetheart. We're in this together, okay? I squeezed my daughter's hand reassuringly as we exited the idling Uber. The courthouse facade towered over us, seeming to mock my frayed nerves. After months of exhausting paperwork, financial untangling, and legal maneuvering, we had finally arrived on Judgment Day. I prayed the Honorable Judge Dalton presiding over the proceedings today saw facts for what they were, that John was a lying, cheating scumbag undeserving of time with my precious daughter. As we navigated towards the assigned courtroom, a familiar grating voice accosted us from behind. There are my two favorite girls. Spinning on my kitten heels, I came face to face with the devil himself. John, in his grubby flesh and slightly disheveled suit, grinning like the moron he was. I quickly stepped in front of Lily, blocking his path. She peeked around my frame warily as I crossed my arms forbiddingly. "Don't come any closer, John. We have nothing left to discuss." His greasy smile remained pasted in place. "Susan, please, we shouldn't fight anymore. It's not good for Lily," he implored with faux sincerity. "I just want to be a family again." "Liar!" Lily suddenly shouted, face scrunching angrily as she dodged under my arm. "If you cared about me, you wouldn't have left us for that blonde witch." I gently tugged Lily back as she vented loudly. While immensely satisfied at my typically soft-spoken daughter finding her voice, I didn't need John's dramatics jeopardizing our case. Sure enough, he instantly switched tactics, amping up the waterworks for arriving spectators. "Lillian, how can you say that? You know you're Daddy's special girl. I never meant to hurt anyone. Please, just come give me a hug." He stretched his meaty arms towards Lily beseechingly. I quickly intervened, shoving his grabby paws back forcefully. Through gritted teeth I seethed, "Save your sniveling act, John. You lost any shot playing father months ago." Propelling Lily forward, I called over my shoulder, "Let the courts finally set you straight." Settling into the creaky wooden benches with Lily tucked protectively under my arm, I steadied my nerves with deep breaths. We could do this. Justice would be served. I stroked Lily's baby fine hair soothingly as we awaited kickoff. Right on cue, an authoritative voice bellowed, "Mitchell versus Mitchell, presiding Judge Dalton." We approached the podium as John did the same, keeping my expression schooled neutral. What followed next was a tedious hour rehashing the same tired arguments from our mediation session. John begged for leniency as an imperfect human, while I calmly recapped his endless lies and manipulation. Finally, Judge Dalton, an austere woman with spectacles perched severely on her nose, intervened. "Enough, Mr. Mitchell. While your transgressions alone don't necessarily forfeit custody rights, Mrs. Mitchell makes valid claims to your parental unsuitability." John instantly reddened, opening his mouth for rebuttal, but the judge steamrolled on. "There are concerning patterns here: missed school events, financial negligence regarding child support, empty promises that understandably eroded the mother-daughter trust." My heart swelled, hearing Judge Dalton finally hold John accountable. Justice was being served. Therefore, I hereby grant Mrs. Mitchell full physical and legal custody of Lillian Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell will be restricted to supervised monthly visits pending evaluation of sustained behavioral changes. She banged her gavel decisively. Court adjourned. The celebratory leap from our bench jostled several loose papers, but I didn't care one iota about decorum in that spectacular moment. Laughing joyously, I twirled a similarly elated Lily in gleeful circles. Nearby, John stood motionless, ashen-faced, as the bailiff approached to escort him out, while rattling off next steps for scheduling visit supervisor meetings. But suddenly, John shrugged off the restraint, charging towards us wildly. "You heartless bitch!" he roared, spittle flying. "You can't steal my daughter away!" Security lunged to apprehend John's bulk as he thrashed violently like a rabid animal, his blistering gaze promising unfinished business even while being dragged away in handcuffs. I instinctively clutched Lily tighter to shield her from the horrifying outburst. But as John disappeared from view, I slowly exhaled the lingering tension. We had endured the worst already. The legal system would protect us from here on out. Today commemorated much-awaited closure and the dawn of a hopeful new chapter. I tapped my heels impatiently against scuffed linoleum, assaulting the last cold dregs of my coffee. The airport lounge television was tuned to some mindless mid-morning talk show, volume muted. Where was that blasted connection flight from Houston? Lily craned her neck expectantly beside me. We had been awaiting my parents' arrival for over 6 hours now after unexpected weather delays along their journey from Florida. Their impending first visit since my divorce, finalized last month, carried special meaning. Mother would certainly dissect every detail of the legal battle and aftermath, offering her signature, unfiltered feedback. While normally exhausting, I knew her unique perspective might provide needed closure. My phone suddenly dinged with an incoming news alert. I skimmed the notification headline casually. before instantly doing a double take as the words registered fully. Biz exec John Mitchell's affair, outburst go viral, career in tailspin. Heart racing. I urgently tapped the link for more details as Lily peered over my shoulder curiously. The damning article that loaded was accompanied by the very courthouse steps photo capturing John's crazed eruption towards Lily and I weeks earlier. So that's what had been the mysterious incident. Vague whispers alluded to around John's abrupt departure from the company. I scrolled hungrily, the scandalous details sating my nosy appetite. Apparently, the amateur courthouse footage had spread rapidly across social media last month. Once John's identity was leaked by tipsters, all hell broke loose. The very workplace that once celebrated John's swaggering bravado apparently couldn't distance themselves fast enough from the wife-abandoning, tantrum-throwing villain caught on tape. Once the social media wagons circled to dig up more dirt, local press had begun circling like vultures. John's 19-year-old mistress, Jessica Stanforth's Instagram influencer aspirations provided tabloid fodder and tanked overnight. Brazen poolside selfies vanished instantly when the dotting dad community realized they had been funding her lusty lifestyle all along. John himself became persona non grata overnight, both personally and professionally. The article cited inside sources, claiming his employer received endless complaints demanding the snake's firing. Rather than withstand the judgmental scrutiny, John had apparently negotiated a hasty exit, collecting only a fraction of his remaining contract dues. I leaned back against the plastic seat with undisguised relish. So Johnny Boy was finally reaping some bitter karma after decades believing money and status placed him above common decency? Couldn't have happened to a more deserving jackass. Just then, the garbled intercom announced the next flight's long-awaited arrival. As Lily and I eagerly gathered our carry-ons, I made a mental note to clip this exposé for Mother's take later over dinner. She always did relish a salacious takedown of toxic men abusing power. After hasty introductions with the driver holding our name sign, we headed towards baggage claim. I was just pointing out the empty carousel to activate when suddenly a familiar gruff voice bellowed out. "There's my gorgeous girl." Lily's delighted squeal was soon muffled against my stepdad Dave's broad chest as he enfolded her in his signature bear hug. I quickly found myself swept up too against Dave's lumberjack frame alongside Mom's waifish one. As I soaked up the familial affection like a sponge, tears pricked unexpectedly. In my crusade against John's villainy, I had nearly forgotten the power of true unconditional love staring right at me. On the drive over, with Lily chattering happily from her perch between my parents, I gazed out at the sun-speckled skyscrapers buzzing by outside. The future shimmered with possibility now that dead weight had been shed fully. Mom reached over to pat my hand gently, compassion shining from her still youthful features. In her crinkled eyes, I glimpsed the promise of more laughter than tears in this new chapter unfolding. Leaning back against the plush leather, I let the metaphorical dust settle completely. John's downfall was merely collateral damage amid more profound lessons recently carved painfully but necessarily. Prizing truth and loyalty in all facets of life here on out would steer me right, and my daughter would thrive with fierce feminine role models lighting the way forward. "Ooh, where should we hang this one, sweet pea?" I smiled down at Lily, who was frowning at the newly printed photo in concentration, tongue sticking out adorably. Sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains in our bare-walled apartment, the fresh start still needing personalization. Maybe next to your accounting certificate, Mommy. Since it's another thing to be really proud of," Lily finally declared decisively. I chuckled and squeezed her shoulders affectionately at the sentiment before moving to hammer the professional portrait of myself in a sleek blazer into place. Stepping back, I surveyed our progress with swelling satisfaction. The chaotic last few months of legally severing from John, finding an affordable apartment, enrolling Lily in a new school, and relaunching my CPA business had certainly stretched me thin. But with my parents' short-term help settling things and providing free childcare, the worst was behind us. I still grappled occasionally with twinges of self-blame for uprooting Lily's stability, but so far she was adjusting admirably to her new bedroom and school community. And with each personalized fixture we assembled, her canopy bed, customized desk area, art collection, I witnessed our little nest become a sanctuary emitting hints of joyful life again. The strident ring of my cell phone interrupted our interior design planning then. I glanced down to see an unknown Denver number flashing insistently. Brow furrowing, I answered cautiously. Likely just another tedious robocall, I assumed, but instead, a hesitant female voice instead asked, am I speaking with Susan Mitchell? I mean Susan Hayes? I stiffened warily. Who was this, and how had they tracked down my cell or new legal name change? Speaking, and you are? I prompted crisply when she didn't immediately elaborate. Oh, terribly sorry. I should have introduced myself first. I'm Martha Reed. I was hoping we could talk. She rushed on breathlessly as I struggled placing the unfamiliar name. Again, you have me at a loss here, Ms. Reed, I countered bluntly, instinctually protective against unsolicited intrusions after the media spectacle lately. What is this regarding? An awkward pause followed before Martha replied delicately, as if choosing words carefully. Well, this is rather sensitive, but I wanted to provide a heads up. I recently left John Mitchell after discovering overlaps in our relationships. I nearly dropped the phone as her shy confession sank in fully. This total stranger had also been entangled with my lying ex while we were still legally married? I stammered incredulously. Wait, John was dating you while still with me and his little mistress? Unbridled fury clawed up my throat as the room tilted dangerously. That snake truly possessed zero scruples. Martha made sympathetic noises, seemingly misreading my outrage source. I know, it's absolutely shocking discovering his horrid duplicity. I never imagined John deceiving me so callously either, but that courtroom video unlocked the ugly truth. As she prattled on, rehashing betrayal wounds, vindication slowly tempered my boiling vitriol. So yet another blameless woman had fallen prey to John's deceitful charm offensives before recognizing his true colors eventually. At least we could commiserate over hard lessons learned about the false fronts certain master manipulators wear. I gently intercepted Martha's tangent at the next natural pause. Well, I truly appreciate you two taking the initiative to contact me and share your experience. It definitely confirms John's pathological patterns. I chuckled mirthlessly before adding, I mainly feel sorry for whichever poor soul gets ensnared by him next once the charm stocks dwindle. We exchanged a few more pleasantries about moving forward solo as strong, wiser women. After securing Martha's number just in case, I finally hung up, feeling fully reinforced in my life redirect. Lily glanced up from her coloring inquisitively, but I just shook my head, smiling. No need exposing her innocence to John's endless deceptions. She embodied our bright future ahead rather than past darkness.